The Incal is a 6-part series written by Alejandro Jodorowsky and illustrated by Jean Giraud, better known as Moebius. My apologies in advance for any mispronunciations. Moebius has a list of solo credits that are many and varied. His work was regularly featured in Metal Hurlant in Europe and in heavy metal in North America. Perhaps he's best known for his silent feature, Arzak, or his surreal science fiction epic, Airtight Garage. Possibly, in North America, he's best known for illustrating Silver Surfer, Parable. He is, without exaggeration, an influential, prestigious artist, known worldwide. Alejandro Jodorowsky is not a very well-known name. To movie buffs, he's the director of El Topo, The Mole, and the enigmatic classic, The Holy Mountain, which is a film one either endures for 10 minutes before turning it off, or where one sits entranced for its entire runtime. In my opinion, his most accessible movie is Santa Sangre, a beautiful but terrifying spectacle of madness and hope set within a circus. Although Jodorowsky has a career that includes a vast amount of media, and like Moebius, he's written quite an array of comic books. Notoriously, Jodorowsky was the first director to attempt to adapt the Frank Herbert novel, Dune. This failed 2-year production is where he first met Moebius, whom he had hired to provide designs and storyboards. Reportedly, some of the designs and concepts of that failed Dune adaptation would be included in the Incal. As a side note, Jodorowsky also hired the artist H.R. Giger and the screenwriter Dan O'Bannon to work on Dune. H.R. Giger's disturbing designs would inspire O'Bannon to complete a script that would eventually be known as Alien. The actual inspiration for the Incal story was a dream Jodorowsky had one evening. Quote, "I dreamed I was flying in intergalactic space. A cosmic being formed of 2 superimposed pyramids, one black, the other white, was calling me. I moved toward it and found myself submerged in the center. We exploded. And that's how my subconscious mind introduced me to the Incal." Unquote. For anyone familiar with Jodorowsky's work, a dream being the source of inspiration isn't all that surprising. Jodorowsky is a rather complex person with a belief system that somewhat defies an easy explanation. It's enough to mention that, within his comics and movies, he uses symbolism, metaphor, existentialism, abstraction, and analogy to represent his esoteric, spiritual beliefs. So there is a fair amount of interpretation contained within the Incal. Finally, the aesthetic for the Incal was inspired by a prior collaboration between Moebius and Dan O'Bannon, the screenwriter of Alien. They created The Long Tomorrow together for Metal Hurlant in 1976. And according to Moebius, he borrowed the bleak cityscape of that story for the Incal. As a side note, Ridley Scott also borrowed this aesthetic for the 1982 movie Blade Runner. End of side note. For clarity, the Incal Saga has 2 sequels and a prequel, but the focus of this video is on the core original series produced between 1981 and 1988. Now, I rarely self-insert, but I have to acknowledge that the Incal is a daunting piece of work. While the story is intentionally universal, there may be cultural aspects that escape my attention. This is also a story covered in esoteric mysticism, which is another element that may not be my specialty. Taken together, the forthcoming interpretations may be a touch basic. Regardless, I will do my best not to misrepresent the intent of the material. But if any errors in judgment do occur, they're made honestly. And these errors reflect my unfamiliarity with specific spiritual concepts. The Incal is also a piece of work that allows for interpretation to some degree. So, right or wrong, this is my interpretation. End of self-insert. The first volume introduces the protagonist, John DeFool. DeFool, by all appearances, is a reasonably average Class R private detective who's familiar with the seedier parts of City Shaft. He enjoys the simple pleasures in life: cigarettes, booze, recreational drug use, and sex. He's a rather basic person who enjoys indulging in creature comforts when he can afford them. DeFool takes an assignment to protect one of the city's aristocrats during her excursion into the lower levels. Naturally, DeFool fails in his appointed task, and he ends up having to shoot the amok terrorist, Kill Wolfhead. DeFool escapes Wolfhead's ensuing rampage, and he winds up in the ventilation system of the city. Here he encounters a Berg, an alien species in competition with humans. This Berg is murdered by mutants, but not before he hands DeFool a mysterious item known as the Incal. At home, DeFool is attacked by Amok terrorists looking for the Incal. DeFool hides it in his bird companion, Depot. The Amok terrorists try to get the Incal's location from DeFool, but he's physically unable to tell them. Once the robot police take care of the terrorists and interrogate DeFool, he goes home to discover Depot has become a messiah. Suddenly, Bergs and mutants attack. DeFool and Depot escape, but they are captured by the president's hunchbacks, who then take him to see the newly cloned, slightly androgynous president. Of course, the president also wants the Incal. Again, DeFool escapes. He ends up on a funeral train on its way to Techno City, the home of the Techno Priests. It's also the location of the Black Incal. When John arrives, he is captured by the Techno Priests. This volume ends with the Metabaron, the universe's deadliest mercenary, being coerced by the Amok terrorists to kill John DeFool. The allegory that stands out the most in this first installment is the name of the protagonist, John DeFool, or the Fool. So this will be a fool's journey, possibly on the path to enlightenment, where he'll either accept, reject, or forget what he's learned along the way. In some interpretations, the Fool reveals truth in the form of a joke, but the Fool does have a variety of interpretations, depending on the culture and its usage. In the Incal, it appears John is intended to represent the tarot card version of the Fool, in which case he embodies a vagabond or everyman archetype. The major associations of this archetype are numerous: folly, mania, extravagance, delirium, frenzy, and betrayal through exposing details. If the card is reversed, the Fool embodies negligence, apathy, unimportance, and vanity. According to Jodorowsky, this is the human spirit in its most primitive form. That's a fair amount for one character to carry, but all of these traits are present in John DeFool. Notably, he's content being who and what he is, and he is quite resistant to any implication of change. These are quite average human traits. For the most part, he just wants to get home and to put this adventure behind him. To paraphrase Moebius, DeFool doesn't understand what's happening, and he doesn't want to understand. This further reinforces the premise that this is, truly, a fool's journey, taken under duress. The aristocrats and technopriests are an interesting contrast to one another, and they are an example of the pairing of elements, like the luminous Incal and the black Incal, that occur through the saga. The aristocrats glow and have halos above their heads. If the analogy wasn't obvious enough, they also live in a floating palace above the lower classes, all of whom live in City Shaft, a literal hole in the ground. The technopriests have no visible eyes and wear dark visors. They are blinded by their devotion to technology and to the black Incal. The dead are a source of food, which they share with the neighboring City Shaft. The dead are also a vital part of the technology they create. They extract useful bits to empower the black Incal. So the aristocrats loosely represent the host of heaven, and the technopriests loosely represent the demons of hell. Emphasis on loosely. Both of whom are in pursuit of John DeFool, who represents the human spirit. One could argue DeFool's journey is to transcend these narrow, moral definitions and become something unique. Possibly, by doing so, he becomes enlightened. The second volume is a whirlwind of activity. The technopriests launch a black egg into space, then they turn their attention to John DeFool, who they intend to dissect to get the luminous Incal. Depot intervenes, John is released, and they manage to hide in the sphere that contains the black Incal. Here, John DeFool takes possession of the black Incal. This makes the technopriests powerless, and the Techno City itself explodes as a result. Meanwhile, the Metabaron approaches the ruins of Techno City. John DeFool awakens in the rubble to see Anima, the Rat Queen. He gives her the black Incal, and she rides away. DeFool chases after her and is killed by the Metabaron. A revolution takes place in City Shaft. The aristocrats are conquered by the Amok terrorists, working in conjunction with other factions. The president is forced to transfer his consciousness into the unstoppable killing machine, the Necrodroid. He then goes in pursuit of John DeFool and the Incals. The Metabaron delivers John DeFool's lifeless body to Tanata, the leader of Amok and the sister of Anima. We will also learn that Anima is the mother of Sol-Yun, the adopted son of the Metabaron. Suddenly, John DeFool arises from the dead, and everyone present unites to escape the rampage of the Necrodroid. To do this, they attempt to cross the acid lake, but they end up being sucked down even further into a whirlpool. Anima appearing out of nowhere is a thematic necessity. Considering the series is made up of remarkable situations, it's no surprise that there are convenient coincidences that occur. Anima herself personifies the Jungian concept with the same name. She represents the unconscious female traits of Jean de Fool. Logically, Jean must be the animus, or the unconscious male traits of anima. Notably, they are connected by a beam of light extending from one mind to another. They are also mostly naked when they meet. In other words, they are exposed to one another, and they are attracted by a force they cannot resist. Jean's reactions are seemingly instinctive. He's overcome by an urge to approach anima and give her the black inkle. Overall, and in basic terms, the anima and the animus are the light and dark aspects of the unconscious mind. Presumably, whether one is light or dark depends on the gender of the individual. Regardless, with Jean being the possessor of the white, luminous inkle, it makes sense that anima should possess the black inkle. Furthermore, it also makes sense that they would desire to reunite at some point. Again, this is another pairing of elements, male and female, light and dark, conscious and unconscious. Like Dante in the Divine Comedy, the assembled players must descend into the heart of the planet in order to escape. They arrive at a garbage pile where they meet up with Anima and her pack of psycho-rats. They then travel to the light at the center of the world, while being pursued by the Necrodroid. At the center of the world, they must forgive the person they're paired with in order to transcend. Anima herself is at the center of the light. Once their hearts are purged, they ascend. While the Necrodroid continues its pursuit, the group arrives at and then descends into the heart of the interior sun. Once there, it's revealed that Sol Yun is the child of de Fool and Anima, who posed as one of de Fool's homeo whores in order to be impregnated. Once this truth is revealed, Sol Yun transforms into the perfect androgyne, a being balanced between light and darkness. He then becomes the heart and soul of the engine that unites the black and luminous inkles into a starship. Soon thereafter, they discover that shadow eggs are devouring suns. This volume, the middle point of the saga, sets the direction for the remainder of the series. It becomes a massive spiritual space opera. There is so much esoteric symbolism going on that it is nearly impossible to break it down and summarize it. In a manner of speaking, the transformation, or transfiguration, to use the story's terminology, occurs within the story and to the story simultaneously. It's metaphysical and it's existential. It's symbolic and abstract. In my opinion, this chapter alone is a scholarly thesis waiting to be written. It is a daunting task to try and unpack everything that's going on. This is the final part of the physical and existential journey to a degree. The assembled group begins literally covered in filth, surrounded by the metaphysical embodiment of their fears. As the journey progresses, they shed their negative attributes until they are attuned and harmonious as a group. Simultaneously, they fulfill individual roles and maintain their unique characteristics. But together, they are a united force of good assembled to defeat an evil that permeates the universe. They ascend from being bound to the earth into the heavens, metaphorically speaking. Through this journey, Sol Yun, the child of de Fool and Anima, becomes the perfect androgyne, better known as a rebus. A rebus is, spiritually speaking, a reconciliation of spirit and matter, a being of both male and female qualities. This pairing allows the two inkles to join together, becoming the ultimate representation of good in the universe. The remaining volumes of this saga are an attempt to defeat the aggressive evil force, the Great Darkness, both physically and spiritually. This is not a dismissal of the final 3 volumes. They are, for the most part, conflict, drama, and a discovery of the final resolution, all of which are necessary elements of a story. But it's the first 3 volumes that establish all the thematic elements that will be explored for the remainder of the series. Once established, the Incal becomes a wild space opera where the fate of the universe and the human spirit is decided. The resolution is contingent on all the sentient beings in existence entering a theta dream. This is a state where the brain oscillates at a certain frequency, one that represents the areas of the brain responsible for learning and memory. Once that's accomplished, the Great Darkness can be entered and destroyed once and for all. Despite the Incal being powered by the accumulated dreams of the universe, it still requires a sacrifice to annihilate the Great Darkness. All of the Incal crew, with the exception of Jean de Fool, release themselves from life to power the Incal and to allow it to complete the journey. Jean de Fool refuses to sacrifice himself. He travels with the Incal, now transformed into a translucent Incal, to meet the presence of the universe, the being known as Or. Or and the translucent Incal merge, where the Incal, which is the repository of all the dreams in the universe, becomes the creator of a new universe. The Fool becomes the eternal witness, a being with the responsibility to remember all that came before. In fact, it's implied he has gone through this journey countless times, yet he's never remembered. So the loop begins again, the eternal recurrence restarts, and the Fool finds himself once again falling towards certain death. The ending is both hopeful and nihilistic, which is quite apt considering the pairing of elements throughout the entire saga. It is hopeful because the universe has been recreated, possibly as a better version of itself, containing the dreams of all humanity. It is nihilistic because this journey has been undertaken many, many times, and it always arrives at the same conclusion, so it seems somewhat pointless. At the same time, it can represent one's spiritual journey through their life, as they go through stages of awareness and transformation, looking for enlightenment. It's a journey we all take in a wide variety of forms, some of which are based on the more traditional religions. Others are through logic and reason or existential philosophy. Others through scientific discovery and examination of the laws that hold this universe together. Or that journey is a combination of these elements, chosen by the individual as they discover what their unique direction looks like. There is no absolute correct path. There's no shortcut to enlightenment. And, overall, it's a process that recurs infinitely. We are, briefly, the accumulation of the experience and the dreams of all that preceded us. Despite this eternal recurrence, which may be infinite, there is an uplifting, positive message represented. That message being, one's spiritual journey through life doesn't end in darkness, but in light.